Garlax had challenged the greatest warrior of Koros for their hand when we left off, and Ben just sort of sighed like they were stupid. Though the War Master and Luma both looked surprised hearing their declaration, and the War Master agreed to allow it to take place after they finished, as fighting on an empty stomach is simply bad for both fighters. Gwen was sort of confused, and Reverb was basically unreadable as usual. After finishing their meal, Kor told them that he would have the battle halls prepared for them and then headed off to go do that, with Luma saying that she needed to go to prepare as well and needed to borrow Gwen for a bit before also heading off. Garlax sighed and asked Ben if he could ask them about something sort of embarrassing, and Ben just simply quirked an eyebrow in response, seeing their awkward behavior, and sighed. Ben agreed and went off so that it was just the two of them. He told Reverb how to get to the battle halls, and they nodded and began to head off. Once it was just the two of them, Garlax then asked if all girls made guys awkward like that. He'd wanted to talk to Luma, but he couldn't for some reason, and it was confusing him. Sighing in response to this, he told them that he had a crush on her and calling him stupid. Ben then told him that he needed to be focusing on the fight and began teaching him what little he could to counter the Tetraman fighting style. Meanwhile, Gwen was just sitting on an oversized bed, confused herself, with Luma picking out an outfit for the upcoming fight. She'd asked Gwen's opinion, figuring that if she could get Ben, she could help her get the cute guy's attention. Gwen just became even more confused. Luma thought the guy with the squid face was cute. Okay. To each their own, she guessed. But picking out a warrior's outfit wasn't really Gwen's forte. She did help as best she could, though, helping pick out a good, or at least they thought it was good, outfit for the upcoming fight. Though why Luma needed to change for it, she wasn't really sure. Cutting back to what Ben was doing, he changed into forearms to help teach them how to better prepare for a fight against the Tetraman as best they could while the battle halls are being prepared. He told Garlax to remember to mind his surroundings, as they may or may not provide some sort of advantage for them, and with a nod they listened to what advice he had to offer. Once the battlegrounds were ready, they then called for everyone, and they all went to where they were located, with Ben changing back once they got there. Gwen asked why he'd been forearms, and he told her that it was part of the training. The War Master Kor then called out that the challenger Garlax had challenged the greatest warrior for her hand, and he looked up at them confused, hearing her. Luma then walked out in her new outfit ready to fight them, and her father then told them they may begin when ready. This confused the Vilgaxian, as the princess grabbed him by the face and warned that just because he was cute didn't mean they were going easy on him. And while he was processing her calling him cute, she then slammed two of her fists into his face, knocking him backwards. Ben called out to Garlax to get his head in the game. Focus, don't let them distract him, as Luma then slammed her two main arms against the ground, just barely missing her challenger as he'd rolled out of the way. Kor was sitting there with the others and sighed as if this was something that he found to be romantic, calling it young love, with Gwen giving them a strange look, as did Reverb. Well, he had the same look as always, but the intent was there. Garlax was using what little he'd learned from Ben to avoid Luma's attacks. He tried to get behind her, striking at the center of her back where none of her arms could reach, and then tried to go for a suplex, but she'd elbowed him repeatedly with her extra arms, forcing him to let go of her, before turning and punching him with all four of her fists over and over again. Garlax tried to grab her by the waist and tackle her to the ground, but she'd lifted him and thrown him into a decorative stone, making it break and crumble on top of him. This prompted him to stand and tell her that it's time to get serious. He was simply caught by surprise by her, but now he should be able to focus on the fight at hand, and Luma smirked before charging towards him again. The two slammed their fists together, and that made a small shockwave before Luma was then knocked back into the podium area, breaking it partially, as she then got angry and charged at him, catching one of her arms on his neck and throwing him onto the ground, though Garlax was able to regain himself rather quickly and ready to keep going. Garlax had busted part of Luma's helmet, as the two continued fighting against one another a bit more seriously now. She'd knocked him back towards the area they'd damaged earlier, and the two continued their fight, but Garlax managed to knock her back by jumping up and kicking her with the bottoms of both soles of his boots, causing her to pause momentarily to regain herself from the pain. Garlax was about to continue his assault, but stopped, and remembered what Ben had told him about remaining aware of his surroundings, and had an idea. He'd pulled hard on the large post behind him, causing it to crack at the base and bust apart, making the large ball atop it slam into Luma hard and fast, as a dust cloud then filled the area around them from the impact, kicking up sand and other such stuff around them. All, with the smoke clearing, they see the silhouette of one figure holding up the other on their shoulder, as they then walk over towards the group. Garlax had won the fight and sat Luma down in front of the others, passed out but otherwise seeming to be okay. Kor at first seemed to be angry and jumped down in front of them before smiling and holding up his fist, declaring Garlax the winner. They welcomed Garlax to the family and said that they should have the ceremony at once, confusing him even more, as the War Master then lifted up his daughter and began to carry her away, leaving the Vilgaxian to question what just happened, with Ben just laughing in the stands as the other three were looking at him not understanding. After calming down a bit, he then was able to explain why it was so funny. Ben congratulated him on the engagement. This just made things more awkward as they asked what he meant by that exactly. With a laugh, he then explained that Garlax challenged the champion for their hand, and by Tetramand ideals, that meant he was proposing because the champion was Luma, and by winning, the two were engaged to be married. Gwen sighed and told Garlax that from what she was told, Luma wanted him as a trophy husband. With that blunt of an explanation, he was actually oddly okay with that arrangement. Sure, it was sort of an accidental proposal, but he wouldn't mind spending the rest of his life with someone so beautiful, and she's a great fighter on top. This just made Gwen facepalm in response to how he was reacting to all this, just going along with it and everything. But then it's his life. If he wants to marry the four-armed princess the same day they met, then why not? But more importantly, she asked if they were going to be able to take the gauntlet since Garlax defeated Luma in battle, and Ben says that they should be able to, and he'd go to speak with Kor.